A nationwide shortage of wattage. Now the plug is pulled in the Midwest, and their dire new predictions of summer blackouts coast to coast. Dr. Greenspan's shot in the arm for the U.S. economy. Eye on America. Should children be getting a powerful antipsychotic drug meant for adults? And locomotion. A freight train run wild, and a Hollywood-style rescue.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. There are new warnings tonight that America's energy problems could soon get a whole lot worse. An industry group that monitors electricity supplies says California could see even more rolling blackouts this summer than state officials were expecting. Blackouts are also possible in the Northeast, including New York City. And today, power outages were not a prediction, but a reality, as the plug was pulled in parts of 3 Midwestern states, Illinois, Iowa, and Wisconsin. Again tonight, CBS News has complete coverage of what's fast becoming a national energy crunch. We begin with correspondent Bill Whitaker.
It's a sign of the times, unexpected blackouts. With 3 power plants down for repairs, the lights have gone off here 3 times in 2 weeks, closing down schools, building up frustrations.
And I only have 7 days left, and I want to make the best of the 7 days and learn the most I can. I can't do that with them letting us out of school early.
This isn't California, it's Iowa. Schools and businesses in neighboring Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois went dark today, too. The energy crisis has just gone nationwide. According to a just-released national energy report, it can happen here, it can happen almost anywhere. The respected North American Electric Reliability Council says California will face more severe power outages than even pessimists projected, 260 hours of rolling blackouts this summer. And no help from Northwest neighbors. Drought has left them with barely enough hydropower to meet their needs. New York and New England are right on the edge. A heat wave could knock out the lights. In fact, transmission lines up and down the east are maxed out. Equipment failure or extreme weather could make the east the heart of darkness.
There's no magic bullet. There's no single thing to be done that will solve these problems.
So back in California, where it all began, consumers are facing a $5 billion rate hike, the biggest in history.
The generators are thieves, and they're holding us at gunpoint.
It's already helped eat up last year's budget surplus, forcing the governor to downsize the budget this year.
If anything else goes wrong that's unanticipated, we won't have any reserves to draw down upon.
Late today, the California Public Utilities Commission approved a plan that will boost some residential customers' rates nearly 50%. Dan?
Bill Whitaker in Los Angeles. About the problems in the Northeast, and especially right here in New York, with summer blackouts a growing possibility, CBS's Randall Pinkston reports New York, like a lot of states, is now desperately trying to crank up the power supply to meet demand.
In the shadow of the Empire State Building, workers are racing against the clock, trying to head off a power meltdown. Because of high demand, New York City is the most likely candidate for a power crunch. That's why the state is spending $500 million to build 11 small generators that will turn on during peak hours. These many plants are expected to meet the city's immediate demand for power. But the long-term solution, officials say, is bigger plants.
It is absolutely crucial that New York approve a fair amount of generation this year so that we won't have a problem 2 to 3 years from now.
But experts say to avoid problems this summer, there must be no major equipment failures and no region-wide extended heat wave. Even in a best-case scenario, analysts expect higher electric rates.
Customers in this 24-hour city already pay the highest prices anywhere in the continental U.S. Last summer, the cost of electricity jumped 40% over the previous year. To keep the lights on and the costs down, experts say the only solution is to find new ways to manage energy.
Crane and Company in Dalton, Massachusetts is on the cutting edge. The 200-year-old firm makes stationery and the paper used for U.S. currency.
This is where we actually see our electric bill being built minute by minute.
With this monitoring software, plant managers schedule production to take advantage of off-peak rates, delaying some jobs until the weekend when the cost of power is low. At Mary Immaculate Hospital in Queens, New York, this backup diesel generator may ease the pain of expected price spikes. If there's a power alert in the area, the generator will be turned on, reducing the drain on the main grid and reducing the hospital's utility bill.
Our best bet hedge against energy prices is through conservation.
This summer, the mix of conservation, new plants, and a little luck may keep the East Coast from going dark. Randall Pinkston, CBS News, New York.
Democrats in Congress drew a power line in the sand today. They put out their proposals for easing the energy crunch 2 days before President Bush announces his plan. Highlights of the Democrats' plan: consumer tax breaks for energy-efficient homes and vehicles, and for businesses that invest in less power-hungry technologies. Also, federal caps on energy prices, no drilling in the Arctic wildlife refuge, and no big new push to build nuclear power plants. The Federal Reserve is looking to pump some energy into the U.S. economy. It cut a key interest rate again today by 0.5 point this time to the lowest level in 7 years, making borrowed money less expensive and encouraging consumers to spend more. Wall Street has been expecting this rate cut. It responded with single-digit changes for the Dow and the NASDAQ. CBS's Jim Axelrod is covering our economy.
So far this year, Alan Greenspan's made more cuts than a bored barber. Today was the 5th half-point rate cut since January.
You really have to go back to the early 1980s to find a time when the Federal Reserve Board has been as aggressive as it has been in recent months.
Wall Street met the news with indifference. Both the Dow and the NASDAQ were virtually unchanged. With factories still slow and unemployment up, the message from the markets, says Patrick Boyle of Credit Suisse First Boston, show us more.
The economy isn't in such great shape that he can stop cutting rates right now.
But it's a lighter mood on Main Street, like at Nan's Custom Hardware, where President Carl Sorensen likes everything he's seen from the Fed. He hired 2 more people today for their new factory that's 5 times the size of their old one.
With these interest rates dropping, it makes me consider going back to the bank and getting additional financing at a lower rate so that we can use that money to further expand our business.
However you read these headlines, the message is clear. The economy still needs stimulation, and for the near future, the Fed will supply it.
We're treading water, we're having trouble keeping our head above water, but the Federal Reserve Board has now given us a life vest, and it's slowly putting air into that vest.
Another life preserver some have been clinging to, hopefully, the possibility that an income tax cut could come in the form of rebate checks. But as the tax cut package takes shape in Washington, that idea is now close to dead. Dan?
Jim Axelrod, thanks. CBS News has been told that plea bargain talks with alleged FBI spy Robert Hanssen have broken down, and he is now expected to be indicted, possibly as soon as tomorrow. Justice Department lawyers may seek the death penalty. Hanssen's trial could be embarrassing for the FBI. He allegedly went undetected for 15 years, passing secrets to Russia. In another embarrassment for the FBI, this was to have been Tim McVeigh's last night on Earth, but his execution for the Oklahoma City mass bombing murders is on hold because of the FBI's evidence foul-up. FBI Director Louis Freeh got an earful about that today on Capitol Hill. CBS's Cheryl Atkinson has our report.
McVeigh was supposed to be in a special holding cell next to the death chamber, just hours away from lethal injection. Instead, his attorneys are looking through thousands of pages of documents the FBI turned over 6 years late, searching for anything that sheds new light on the case.
Don't know what happened, just a blast.
The FBI says the material comes from the early days of the bombing investigation and focuses on leads that never panned out, including reports of accomplices, such as John Doe No. 2. Some legal experts had argued evidence of an accomplice could have helped McVeigh's lawyers make the case for a reduced sentence. But McVeigh himself may have sabotaged any chance he had to turn the FBI's flub into a permanent reprieve. In a handwritten letter to the Houston Chronicle published today, McVeigh says flatly there is not a John Doe No. 2.
It's just going to make their work tougher. They have their own client undercutting the representations they're attempting to make in court.
On Capitol Hill today, FBI Director Louis Freeh was seen for the first time since the FBI's disclosure, questioned behind closed doors about the latest in a string of FBI embarrassments.
There's too many failures, too many blunders, and a lot of concern.
The FBI insists Freeh only learned of the foul-up Thursday morning, even though agents had been collecting documents for months. An FBI source says for some reason they did not appreciate the gravity of this thing. They underestimated the impact. It's hard to imagine.
The FBI has ordered one more worldwide search for documents and asked the 47 field offices which turned over late information to explain how it happened. Tomorrow, Congress will zero in on the McVeigh mess when Freeh appears before the House on budget matters. Dan?
Cheryl Atkinson. The government came out today with new and aggressive guidelines for treating millions of Americans at risk for heart disease. For starters, these recommendations would triple the number of Americans taking cholesterol-lowering drugs. Correspondent Byron Pitts has a cholesterol check for you on the CBS Health Watch.
Pauline Katz, in her late 40s, has never had a heart attack, no history of heart disease. But doctors say she is still a prime candidate for an attack or stroke because her cholesterol levels are dangerously high. Medication now keeps that under control.
As I'm getting older, I'm thinking about my arteries hardening from the cholesterol, and now, from what medicine knows, I'll have less of a chance of that.
And it's the Pauline Katzes of the world doctors now hope to reach with new guidelines announced today.
We have identified a large number of people that we didn't really recognize before who are likely to get a heart attack over the next few years.
And not just the middle-aged or the elderly, but people in their 20s, anyone with high levels of LDL or bad cholesterol.
Now my cholesterol is right where it should be.
For years, drug manufacturers have targeted these groups with the latest medications. It's estimated some 13 million people take prescribed cholesterol drugs, and that number could jump to 36 million as a result of these new guidelines.
Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer in this country. And most of the deaths actually come from people who never had a symptom of cardiac disease, but they are at high risk. So let's attack these people aggressively.
The new guidelines for people at high risk of heart disease includes those with diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, especially fat around the belt buckle.
Along with the new guidelines came old and familiar recommendations for healthier living, a better diet, more exercise, and if need be, prescription drugs. Byron Pitts, CBS News, New York.
Next on the CBS Evening News, Eye on America investigates troubling treatments for troubled children.
Tonight's Health Watch report is sponsored by Celebrex. Talk to your doctor about Celebrex.
In tonight's Eye on America, CBS News begins a hard news investigation into the use of new and powerful antipsychotic prescription drugs for problem children. One problem with using such drugs is possible severe side effects in these children that could last a lifetime. CBS's Wyatt Andrews has been investigating the risks and benefits.
I mean, like, what if I be good, like, for 5 whole days?
Ronnie Hall, who turns 10 this week, is struggling to look normal, but watch carefully what he does with his hands. Involuntarily, Ronnie clenches his fingers and thumbs. His constant state of twitching is a form of brain damage called tardive dyskinesia.
How long will he be like this?
I don't think it'll go away.
Put your hands by your side, Rick.
His mother, Carol, recorded Ronnie's affliction on this home video. She and Ronnie's doctor believe the cause is a cocktail of antipsychotic drugs Ronnie began taking at age 3 after a diagnosis of conduct disorder.
Put your hands down, Rick.
The problem is the labels on these drugs, the most popular of which is called Risperdal, specifically warn that tardive dyskinesia is a possible side effect in 1 out of 6 adult patients. For children, the safety and effectiveness have not been established at all.
They need to do some more testing with these drugs.
It turns out tardive dyskinesia is just one of many well-known side effects of antipsychotic drugs. Child advocate and Miami law professor Carolyn Salisbury has seen them all.
I had a male client, a 16-year-old boy, who his breasts began growing large and he began lactating. And
he produced milk?
Yes. He was humiliated by this.
Risperdal is part of a class of drugs called atypical antipsychotics, which are known for having relatively few side effects in mentally ill adults. Now, however, these drugs are increasingly prescribed for children. Despite those FDA warnings, their safety is unknown. Advocates like Carolyn Salisbury say the problem is especially bad in state-run programs like foster care.
The number of foster kids on these drugs is what's horrifying.
Florida officials admit they do not know how many children are on these medicines, but they defend drugs like Risperdal as necessary. Charles Auslander of the Department of Children and Families says Risperdal can allow a mentally ill or violent child to function normally.
Without the use of these medications, there would not be an opportunity for other treatments, other interventions to be utilized.
The maker of Risperdal, Johnson & Johnson, declined an on-camera interview, but has told child advocates it does not promote Risperdal for use in children. Tomorrow on this broadcast, a young veteran of the Florida foster system
give her some more medication.
Describes how drugs like Risperdal are often used not for mental illness,
Do I sound crazy to you?
but for control. In Miami, Wyatt Andrews for Eye on America.
There was a new move on Capitol Hill today on what's called the Patients' Bill of Rights. The big sticking point has been a provision to let patients sue their HMOs and other managed health plans. A Bush-backed proposal today would give a limited right to sue with caps on damages. The sticking points now, the health industry is lobbying hard against the right to sue. Others say patients need more rights than the president has proposed to use against HMOs. Next on the CBS Evening News, riding the rails. How do you stop a runaway freight train? We'll show you. In the Middle East, Israeli-Palestinian violence killed at least 5 people and injured more than 100 as protesters marked the anniversary of what Palestinians call the Great Catastrophe. That, in their view, was the day in 1948 when some 700,000 Palestinians were displaced from their homes and became refugees after the founding of Israel. During today's clashes in the West Bank, an Israeli soldier firing at protesters hit a French reporter. Thanks to a flak jacket, the journalist suffered only a bruise. In Ohio today, it was a spectacle on rails, a 47-car runaway freight train that for a time no one seemed able to stop. It all started in a switching yard in Toledo when the train mysteriously took off on its own. And as CBS's Bob Orr reports, it turned into quite a chase.
The Phantom freight train barreled through the flat farmlands of northwest Ohio with no one at the controls. As emergency crews gave chase and police sealed off railway crossings, the curious gathered to watch.
That train ain't got no driver. What do you think about it? What do I think about it? Yeah. What are they going to do? It's headed for Marion.
The train, carrying paper, lumber, and 2 tanker cars of chemicals, eluded capture for 2 hours, at times hitting speeds topping 40 miles per hour. News helicopters tracked the Odyssey for 66 miles across 2 counties to the quiet farm town of Kenton, Ohio.
Been a long time since we had anything like that here in Kenton.
There, another CSX locomotive that had given chase caught the runaway from behind and began dragging the train to a crawl. Engineer Terry Fornson made the capture.
No one's on the train but us.
How'd the train get away? Any idea?
Don't have a clue. It was up ahead of us, and the dispatcher called us and told us.
The freight train slowed enough that another CSX trainmaster was able to jump on board and apply the brakes. The fugitive train safely creaked to a halt.
There was nobody on that engine.
Just how did they get going?
We don't know. We're investigating that right now.
The incident is certain to reignite debate about equipment to prevent rail collisions and stop runaway trains. The technology exists, but so far the government has not required it. And most freight railroads haven't spent the millions needed to have it installed. Bob Orr, CBS News, Washington.
There are some striking new figures from the Census Bureau tonight about the changing American way of life, including a decline in the traditional mother, father, and children's family. For the first time, people living alone accounted for more than 1 in 4 U.S. households, while fewer than 1 in 4 were made up of married couples with children. That compares to 45% in 1960. The number of unmarried couples with or without children increased sharply from the last census, though they still represented just 5% of the total. One more note, bucking the national trend, Americans over 65 are no more likely now to be living alone than they used to be. The likely reason? Men are living longer, leaving fewer widows. That's a good thing. Part of our world tonight. Here's Scott Pelley, now with a preview of tonight's 60 Minutes 2.
Think trains are safe? Then why are they crashing at a rate of nearly 1 every 24 hours? The answer may surprise you. Plus, they're called the Lost Boys, one of the largest resettlements of war orphans in American history. We've never seen anything quite like it.
60 Minutes 2, tonight at 9, 8 Central. And we hope you make a point to join us again tomorrow here for the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on our interactive partner, America Online, at keyword CBS News.
Adult strength drugs for foster kids? Her incredible story tomorrow. Experience CBS News.